Okay, I want to step into one more project here. And this is where we're going to focus on keying and a couple more 3D things that are inside the Smoke. So let me close that timeline I was working on. And let's open this one. So now I've got a couple clips here. I want to talk about what we actually have here. So I've got these clips that were given to me. The original idea of this demo was we were creating a little promo piece for Smoke, thinking like a little bumper of what you will. We wanted to have this woman come in, and we wanted the Smoke logo to come in. She's going to hit it or something. I don't know. But we got some footage on the bottom here. If I start selecting my footage over my bin, I've got a clean backplate here. That was never meant to be used with this footage, okay? We also have another version of the room over here, like so, okay? And then we have some green screen footage. We've got this one here, which actually is not bad. It's a pretty easy key. But then we have this one where you kind of wonder, what were they thinking? You know, maybe the guy doing the green screen thought he was helping us by blurring it. I can do that in the computer. Let me do that. You don't do that, okay? So if I scrub through this, you can see what's happening. She's stepping in front of a light. The light's coming over her shoulder, going into her hair. This is not going to be a one-button easy key, right? So down here, I've got my timeline, and I've got these elements already placed in here for me. So the top layer is the woman that needs to be keyed. The bottom layer, as I navigate down with my little icon, there's the backplate. Over in this clip, I've got the clean backplate with the movement, and the top layer is the other woman. So let's start with this one here, okay? So I'll select that clip, and again, I go to my tools, and I choose my axis tool. I'm going to jump right into the keyer here. So we go back into our keyer tools, and I say, let's use our master keyer. So we've got tons of keying tools in here, but I want to use the master keyer because I find it so intuitive. It really helps me pull the key. Let's make sure we're at a frame where she's in focus. That will help. And let's just come in here, click, and drag across the screen. So we start to pull our key. We want to look at our mat. So we're looking at the mat. We see we have a lot of issues already. This is what we were talking about. That light is a whole different thing. I'm going to work on that in a second. What I want to do is make sure I clean up these areas in here while maintaining and holding that nice detail over here. So with this frame, you can see in the arm, we've got some corruption. We've got corruption over here. This is the part that I was saying is very intuitive. If I hold a hotkey and I come into my viewport, oh, wrong hotkey, Ken. You come into viewport, Smoke is going to give me these sliders that it's suggesting to adjust. So if I come down here and start adjusting this, I can fine-tune that. If I hold my click over here, I get different sliders. Now I'm going to adjust that. So now you can see it's that balance effect. I don't want to kill or corrupt the outside too much without adjusting this. But it just gives you these sliders to go and adjust right in the viewport. What's also nice is you have what's called patches. So right now we're working on the mat. But if I switch to be a patch, what happens is, as I click and drag in the view, it's going to sample what pixel value is inside that and correct the image for you. So notice that when I did patch 1, it switched it to black because we're trying to create transparency. Now let's go and switch to another patch, and I'll say go over here and do this. It automatically switches to white because it knows we're trying to reintroduce those pixels. So it's that smart, and it allows you to fix these things up. All right. Now let's start working on some masks. So I'm going to scrub through here because I know she's moving, and I want to create a mask on each side, left and right, but I don't want her hand to get offended. So if I go to my masking tools, I choose Add, and I'll just quickly draw a mask such as this to clear out this area, and we set this to be black, and let's do one on this side. So I'm going to scrub through and make sure I see where's the, I can animate that. Well, in fact, we'll do that right now. So right here, make sure auto key is on. Let's take our mask, make an adjustment such as this. Move forward a couple frames where she goes into it, and just move that over there. Pretty standard stuff. Okay, now we'll go over here. Let's create a mask for this side. So I choose Add, and I draw my mask just like we would normally for this whole side here. I might need to keyframe that a little bit too. We'll see. Go bring that over there. And if I scrub through, she comes back into it. Yep, right there. We'll just keyframe that. Okay, easy. Now let's worry about the hard part, which is that giant bright light. Oh, let's keyframe that also. Okay, let's worry about this bright light up here. So if we go and add another mask, we're just going to create a mask and kind of draw it really close to her head. I'm not going to worry about her hair right now. The reason being is the masking tools, as I showed you a long time ago when we were looking at the wipe, you have the ability to have those variant edge gradients. Because, of course, if I put on my softness, we're going to get back the hair, but we're also introducing a lot of that light. So instead of using that, we switch to advanced gradients. Now we'll zoom in, and here's where the power comes, is that each one of the tracker boxes, each one of the control points of the mask has this independent control that I can now start to manipulate and animate as I need. Also, she's moving a lot, so let's just do a full track of the mask itself. So I step into the tracker really quick. We're just going to position this on her eye, and I'll click Analyze and let it do its magic. And then I can go back and fine-tune the shape of the mask once the tracker has done the work for me. So I step back here, and you can see that's what I wanted. The track has moved the mask, but now it's really simple. We just go to certain frames, we grab these control points, we start to animate them, and even better yet, we can animate the fall off to make sure we're maintaining the hair the way we want it to be, such as this. Move forward some more frames here. Okay, let's go and select these, and just go. Now tracking that mask control points would be very difficult because of the fact that she's so blurred in frames. It probably would lose it, so it's easy enough just to do that. So now if we return back to our end result, we can see that we're doing a pretty good job. There's still a couple more issues, though. I can see along the edge we've got some corruption happening. So what I'll do for that, let's move this up, is we have the blending tools here. If I just start to adjust the luma, we can alter and change exactly the edge of it so we can make it darker or lighter. More importantly, though, is you've got the auto color correction tools on this. If I disable this, look at all the green spill that's actually happening. You see all that green that's falling on her? I turn that back on. Automatically, the keyer is suppressing the green when you are pulling the key. So that's great. Also, the other thing is you've got the ability to actually start shifting the color that's being suppressed. So maybe she's in a room where it's more of a blue background or a red background. You can actually shift that suppressed color to be the color that you need for the job. Okay, so I'm happy with this. Let's go back to our timeline, and we're going to start focusing on this next shot that we have, okay? This one is going to need a key also, but here's the real problem. We need to take this woman and put her in this room. Okay, we got to make it look real. I don't want this to look lousy, so we're going to be able to take this back into Connect Effects where I have all those other tools. The first thing I'll do is select this top layer, and I'm going to go add an axis effect to it also. And instead of repurposing or redoing the demo of the key, I'm just going to load this key and return back out there. So now I've got her keyed out. That was actually a much easier key, trust me. Now we'll take these two layers. What do we want to do with this? I want to take this into that action environment so I can now position her in 3D space. So to do that, we go back over here. Again, I got my two layers selected. I choose Connect Effects. We step in. Let's go to a two-view layout. Let's also switch this to be my schematic. So again, the action node was created. I've got all these tools now that are at my arsenal to do what I needed to do. So the first thing I want to do is track her to that back plate. So let me just clean something up real quick. So I've got my tracker box right here. Let's go into this first frame, and let's go into the tracker. What? I just realized I turn off that. There we go. So this track is not going to work perfectly, and I'm going to do it purposely because I like to show how you solve the problems. Having a one-button key in a demo is not reality. Having something that tracks so easy is not reality. So I'm going to show you how to correct the problem when something goes wrong. So I say analyze forward, Smoke starts doing it. It is a very powerful tracker, but because the ground changes so much in the color, it's going to lose. That's actually did a lot better than I thought it would. It's supposed to go off. But you'd see it did go off here a little bit, so that's okay. So let's go back to where we have a really good frame. All I need to do is click Snap, and you'll notice what happened. It now readjusts the frame, the pixels it's going to use to analyze the track. So if I click Analyze Forward, you see it starts to update it and correct, and it got lost again. That's okay. Go back to where, again, you see the right track. Hit Snap again, hit Analyze again. This is the beauty. It's able to adjust and change on the fly to pull the track that we need. So now the track is done. I return back out here. You can see that she's now been positioned. I can take her and start moving her around. I can start to manipulate the position wherever I want it to be. And then I can go and set whatever values I think will work best with this shot. So I'm just going to enter a couple of values very quickly like that. She's also a little larger, and the reason being is because she was a half-deburred red file, so she's much larger than our 1080 backplate. So I'll just go in here and shrink her down a little bit to make her fit better in the scene. Something like that. This is what I did yesterday. Bear with me, people. Let me undo that. I'm changing the parameters on my track data. I don't want to be on that axis. I'm glad I realized it yesterday, but we'll go here. Let's use this axis for this, and here's where I would then go and position her wherever I want her to be, inside the scene. So I'll just go and quickly do this. And the point is, if I go and position her where I want her to be using the tracker data, I'm offsetting the tracker. I don't want to do that, obviously. That's also showing the power of having these multiple nodes. So this is the one that I first was messing with and I shouldn't have been. That's my tracker. And I want to repurpose that, so I'm going to name this so I remember which one is the tracker so I don't mess up again. That's good, okay. So now let's start adding some other elements. So I've got her in the scene. Now I want to put a shadow on the ground, right? But she's not in a room, she's just floating in 3D space. So I need to create something that she's standing on, so when I add my lights, it can receive a shadow. So again, here's what's great about having all these tools in one place. I step back out here, I go to my node bin, and I have a thing called a color source. So if I just want a color frame, I bring this in, it comes in just as white, and that's fine. So now to bring that into action, all I need to do is go in here and say, action, I want you to have a new source. So now I get a new layer, I hold some hotkeys, and we just click this. Now that's brought into action also. What do we want to do? We want to make sure it's following that track data. So that's why I named this so I don't grab the wrong one. I parent it to it. So you're able to control all multiple layers with different controls, different axes. Now we want to go and take this layer and start positioning it. Look, we're going to rotate it, obviously, to mimic what the ground would be down by our feet. So we'll go there, and then we just want to take this, position it somewhere here. I might want to scale it so it fits the scene. And then to see where her feet are falling on it properly, I'm going to go to my priority editor and just take and put that on the back. So now I've got something that will receive the shadow, okay? So let's go and add the lights in here. So to add a light, you've seen that in the earlier demo. I'll just go to my tool, and I'll add a light in the scene. My light comes in, and obviously we can animate this and position this where we want it to be. First thing we're going to do is we're going to take this, and we're going to attach the light to that tracker again, because I want the light to move with the camera movement. Again, just repurposing what we're doing. Now I can take this light, and I can position it wherever I want it to be, because it has its secondary control. That's not the light, Ken. Let's take the light and move it back so it's going to light the whole scene, something like that. I can move it up, I can manipulate it. Okay, good enough. Now let's put a light behind her to mimic the light that should be coming from the windows behind her, and then that's the one we'll put the shadow on. So I'll take another light and drag it in there. First thing we'll do, again, I want to repurpose that tracking data. I want to make sure everything in the scene is moving the way it should be, so you can see the lights are now animated. But we'll take this new light, and we're going to start positioning that where I want it to be. So I can just come down and start dragging it back in Z space or so on, like that. So I want it way behind her, like somewhere where the windows would be. I can raise it up. I can do it right in the viewport if I wanted to, or I can use my parameters. But let's say that's close enough, okay? Now with this light selected, I'll go to my tool bin again, and I'm going to hit a hotkey so I can see I have my shadow cast. This allows me to add shadows from any single layer that I have. So now that light is casting a shadow, and here's where I would come back to this plane, our color source, and start manipulating it to make sure it lines up the way it should. Okay, so because she's just floating in 3D space. So now we've got our light happening. If we go to our shadow cast, you'll see we've got all controls like softness. I can make this darker, brighter. We can adjust our light and so on. Now to get rid of the white that's on the color, I'm going to use different blending modes. So that's going to be done by double-clicking on this tool right here, and I come over here. Now, I am very familiar using smoke and flame blending modes. But if you are more familiar using Photoshop blending modes, then switch it to Photoshop. And now I have access to every single Photoshop blending mode. I'm going to switch this to a multiply. And now I still want to soften the look of that plane. I don't like the way it's looking. The edge is looking a little sharp. So here's where the great part is. I go back to my media, and every single piece of media that I've been bringing in is stacked in this source in here. And you'll notice that we have things like keyer, color, correction, all these things you can do to each piece of the media. I'll come here and I'll say I want to soften and crop that. If you look over in this view, it's more evident what I'm doing. See how the solid white here? As I start to drag this value, what we're going to do is create a fall off or a softness as it comes into the scene. So I can go and enter a pretty high value like that, and now we've softened the way it blends into the scene. So now I'm starting to really like this. But here's where I want to bring in my logo. I want to bring in the Smoke logo. And again, I do not want some flat 2D logo. I want to bring in a 3D object. So to do that, it's very simple. Because we are in a true 3D environment, I choose Import, and I get these are all the ones that come default with Smoke. You get all these different geometries, whether it's FBX, or whether it's 3D Studio Max, whether it's Photoshop, Alembic. You got all these different tools. I'm going to go to a bookmark that I have where my Smoke logo is waiting for me, and I load it. I now brought in an actual 3D object, okay? Go to the top view. You can see there's my 3D object. If I select this, I can start to rotate this and manipulate this in 3D space. It is true 3D. Let's do this, though. I need to make sure that my 3D object is following the tracking data. So once again, we take the axis from that, and I feed it onto that. So now it is going to move with the camera movement. Now we can go and offset this. I'll take my axis that is the controller for my 3D object, and I'll position it somewhere where I want it to be. We want to start bringing it up so it's going to fit in the scene. Maybe bring it a little closer to her. Somewhere around there. Okay, that's close enough. And maybe rotate it for a little dynamic. Okay, now we're looking good. You know, I'm going to adjust my shadows. Now I see that, I want to go and make a little more softness to it. There we go. That looks better. That's what's great is we can adjust these things on the fly. I'm seeing this rate and also keep in mind, while I am on a Mac Pro right here, we're showing these same demos on a MacBook and an iMac on these pods. That's another great part of 2013. The requirements you need have been reestablished so you can run it on anything. So this is looking great, but we want to do one more thing. I want to put a reflection on that logo, right? So we're going to go back out to my tools here. Oh, wrong hotkey, bear with me. I go to my bin, and I'm going to go get a paint tool because we have a full paint program inside of Smoke. So if I double-click on my paint node, you can see here's this full layer-based paint tool. I can do recursive cloning. I can do all these different things. Right now, I'm going to leave it as color, but you can see I can smear. I can do all tons of different things. I'm just going to switch this to be a solid color. We'll take our brush, make it a little larger, and I'm just going to create like a swipe like that, okay? Now, the reason why I'm doing that is I want to feed this back into action. So I go back to my action node. I'll choose create a new input, just like I did before. There I get my little marker. I hold my hotkeys, and I add it in here. We go back into action. So there it is. It's brought in. Again, I don't really want it as a layer. I just want access to the media that I just created. With my material selected, with my image selected, I go to my node bin. I hit the R key. We want to go access. I love the hotkey being able to access your tools. I drag it in there. I select my geometry, and I start to rotate. So now you can see I've created a really cool reflection map that's falling onto my Smoke logo. The last thing I want to do is I'm starting to run out of time, but we're going to get this done. I want to add a light in the back, the rays. I want to have rays coming from those windows. So with this light selected, I go back to my node bin. I take my rays tool, and I'll drag it into my scene. It comes in kind of like a flashlight almost, if you will. But if you go to the tools for the rays, you can see what I can do is take my spread and just start spreading this out. So now I can take my light, and I can create a true volumetric rays coming from the windows behind it. Okay, so now I'm happy with this, and I want to go back to my timeline, right? So all I do is I click Exit CFX, Exit Connect Effects. I am in my timeline still. Even though I've done all this work, there's my timeline. Here's the great part. Again, versioning. I'm going to take this, make a copy of that. And we're going to go back into Connect Effects because now the director says, I like it, but I want to have a glow effect on the logo itself. No problem. Let's step back in and let's add that glow effect. Now to do that, I'm going to go back into Action, clean up my UI a little bit. I was making a mess there. And we'll go to our outputs. I want to generate an alpha of just the logo. So to do that, I come here and I say, make a copy of my output, and I'll tell it to be just a matte. So if I take my view here, you can see what I've got. I've got a matte output, and I've got my RGB output. Now, my matte output, I don't want the woman, and I don't want the plane on there. I just want the logo. So you can fix that very easily by coming over here, and I'm going to tell my tool to be the edit output, and I say don't add that and don't add that. So now I have a matte of just the logo, and it's animated and it's moving along perfectly for me. The purpose of that, if we go back out here, to action is just one part of these tools. Remember that. I go back over to my bin, and I have all these tools that I can add, like a glow. So I take my glow tool, I drag it out there, I add it in there. Now by default, if I switch this view to be the result, you can see it's affecting everything, okay? Well, that's why we created this extra output. It's easy to take anything like the output of one clip, put it on another. Now I'm controlling the glow based on the matte that I created in the other tool. That's the beauty of the Connect effects. You have all this flexibility and control of what you're working on. So then in the end, we return back out to my timeline. I have my multiple versions. So to sum it all up, 2013, the first thing we did is we rewrote the UI and the editing workflow for you. We listened to people, and we created a workflow that you can step into right away. Then we went and added all those tools in the Connect effects. We didn't take any power away from Smoke, but we also made it run on the iMac and the Mac Pro and the MacBook. And then the last thing that was blowing people away is at $259 on Sunday, it was $15,000 to buy Smoke. At 3 o'clock on Sunday, it was $3,495. So that's Smoke 2013. We are in all over the place. If you want to get close, ask questions, I'll be here. Guys, I hope you enjoy this. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks a lot, Ken.